Welcome to the Ranchonomics podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started.
All right, I'm joined by Dallas Mount today. Glad to speak to the leader of the Ranching for Profit School. We're going to talk as we go a little about the things that Ranching for Profit teaches and what Dallas does for a living. Today, I want to talk about the value of education. We are at a point right now in August of 24 where I would say that markets are still fairly high, but man, there is a lot of uncertainty. I was over to a Superior sale in Sheridan the other day, and calves were selling for good prices, and everybody was kind of unhappy. There's just a feeling of uncertainty right now. I know we're all kind of waiting for a crash. Costs have gone up. Interest rates are higher than they've been for many of us in a while. It's funny because prices are high and we're still facing pretty strong headwinds. So I would like to talk today about the value of investing in education. And sometimes we call this investing in yourself. But Dallas, you do a lot of teaching, and I'd like your perspective on why should people, even when times are hard financially, invest in education? Because it's expensive.
It is. Well, it should be. I hope it is. If you're going to the cheap ones, right? Yeah, I agree. There's some challenges with what's going on, but I also think it's a spot where people might have some money in their pocket that they haven't had in a while, and maybe there might be a tendency to hit the cruise button on the ranch and not really intensify one's management. So I think the right time to look at options to develop is not just when things are hard, but also when you've got money in your pocket and options ahead of you. That's a great time to create some perspective and to say, all right, what should we do? Maybe we should try a few things now and do some of those things. So investing in education, I think, is a great way to do that. Now, I like to take the perspective of if I was an owner of your ranch, let's pick a medium-sized family ranch, right? 300 to 600 cows and the assets at play here. And now I'm a 30% shareholder. And I walked into this business as a shareholder and looked at it from the outside. And I talked to the senior leader of this ranch. All right, what are you doing? Tell me your game plan for the coming year, right? And if they did not have some component of professional improvement in that game plan, to me, that's a huge dropped ball, right? I mean, you're not going to talk to a CEO of a $10 million business, maybe sometimes $20 million businesses in some of these cases, right? And they're not going to say, well, what are you doing for your professional improvement plan? Well, there's a free lunch going on downtown at the local Chamber of Commerce, right? And that's my entire professional improvement plan for the year, right? If that was your CEO, right, I would hope you would slap that person around. So I think we should look at our farms and ranches at the same capacity. And it doesn't mean you have to be huge before you're going to invest in professional improvement. It just means that needs to be part of it. And I'm not sitting here saying ranching for profit's the only way to do that, right? There's a lot of great ways. In my opinion, there's two things that if you're going to be serious about professional improvement, that you need to do. One of the things that needs to take you off the farm. I don't think you can have a meaningful professional improvement experience sitting in your office, for half a day on a Zoom meeting. It can't be transformative, right? To have a transformative experience, you've got to get away from it, networking with others, and have that perspective without the things going on right outside your door that are going to distract you from that. So I would encourage people to look for something that gets them away. It should be a multi-day event to do that, to really help you settle in. And then I think the other thing is you need to have a budget for, okay, what are we going to invest in ourselves annually? And if people are coming at the end of the year and you say, hey, we had budgeted, $4 or $5 grand for your professional improvement last year, what'd you spend? And they come back and say, well, we didn't spend anything, right? That's a problem. That's a conversation that you need to have on the ranch to say, wait a minute now, we expect you to be growing. If you want to move up in your role in this business, that you need to be investing in yourself. So that's kind of the way I think about it. What would you add to that?
But Dallas, what if I educate my employees and my team members and they leave? What if I invest in sending people to these, not free lunch programs put on by Extension downtown? What if they leave? And my response to that is always, yeah, but what if they stay? What happens if I have an uneducated workforce and I don't teach them how to be better and then they don't leave?
And then they don't leave, right?
I think there's a lot of interesting stuff you bring up there. And probably the most important thing I see is something that we actually talked about in one of our early podcast interviews with Aaron Helmick, where he said kind of tongue in cheek, like, boy, I hope some of the people that put on these education programs don't know the full value because I am not prepared to pay the full value. And he was referencing stockmanship and that sort of thing. And yet at the same time, I think most people go in and think, boy, this is expensive. And it's expensive not just in money, but in time, right? It is an investment. But what we often see is investment in good education pays many, many, many times over, right? I liken the example of what did I pay for ranching for profit 20-ish years ago, and how much profit have I made since then? 20 years of reapplying the same principles over and over again have gotten us to an awfully good place. So I would also like to not quite pay you the full value of that. We want to make that so it's a meaningful exchange. And education is definitely a gift that keeps on giving. It is something that continues to evolve in that, but also there's no limit to the number of times we can apply it, right?
Yeah.
I can put a pill down a throat once. I can put a egg in an ear once, maybe twice if I'm thrifty. But this I get to keep using again and again.
I appreciate where a lot of farmers and ranchers are coming from when they're resistant to doing this, because you look at the experiences that people have had with education, right? So a lot of times, the people that are coming to us, the only education experience they've had is like K through 12 or maybe some crappy university experience, right? Where the professor was talking about things they were never going to use in real life. It was delivered in a super dry, regurgitate this kind of format, or they went to a crappy extension meeting in town. And so now we tell them, oh, hey, come for 7 days, sit in a classroom. And they have this perspective that we're going to be the crappy extension person with 600 PowerPoint slides of which you're asleep by number 7.
Right.
And so I can understand why they think there's no way I'm going to pay several $1,000s to come have that kind of pain inflicted on me for 7 days.
Yep.
I do think when we look at these things, let's set a high bar for ourselves of finding things that actually move the needle, people who are actually good at putting together impactful education programs, right? Not just putting together a PowerPoint slide deck and reading it to you, right? That's not education.
Based on their 1.5-year research project that they did 30 years ago in a 4x4 meter field.
Right.
But let me add here to our friends that are in extension, and you are a former extension university type person. They're not all bad, right?
Yeah, right.
There are some good ones, but you do have to pick through kind of a wide assortment of what the offering is, right?
Yeah. And I just want to tell those folks that if that's been their only experience, there is good stuff out there. So be a bit more discerning. What we find is when you fall down the rabbit hole, this one leads to that one, which leads to this one.
Right.
So you kind of start looking at good stuff, and then people are going to refer you to the next one.
Good, which is one of the things that I like about RFP, and one of the reasons I consider it so foundational is because you guys cover a wide range of topics. You often introduce people to topics maybe they hadn't thought about, but you also talk about the linkages between those things. And just as you're saying, that gives you an opportunity to sort of go down the rabbit hole in different areas, right? Where, okay, grazing and finance are tied together, nutrition and grazing and finance are tied together. Now, as you get into those details more, then that often leads to additional educational opportunities, which complement the foundation you've kind of started with, right?
Yeah, correct. I think most of your listeners are probably a step or two ahead of this, but I see a lot of people who are coming to education who are kind of new to this area. They come looking for recipes.
Yep.
Because that's the way they've been taught. So they went to the extension. We're picking on extension. I don't mean to flog extension, but they're an easy target today. They go to the extension program and that person tells them, feed this, calve here, move your cattle here. And so that's the way people have been taught is you go to an industry program where they're feeding you lunch, right? And they're going to tell you, use this vaccine.
Yeah.
I think once we start to raise our thinking on these things, we don't go to these programs looking for recipes, right? That's a terrible thing to do. You go to these programs to look for principles, to look for foundational thought, right? And then on those principles, you build your own scaffolding of this is how we're going to do it on my place. This is how we're going to implement this. So just want to throw that challenge out to folks is you don't go to these programs looking for somebody to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
They're going to help develop your thinking. They're going to help sharpen your thinking, challenge some of your basic assumptions. And that's what you're going for is that.
At Ranchite LLC, we believe your ranch deserves more than just survival mode. You deserve to thrive. Our experienced accountants and business coaches will help you get control over your financials so you can focus on what you do best, running the ranch. We offer a comprehensive process that includes bookkeeping, consulting, and even training tailored to your needs. Don't let your financials slow you down. Visit ranchritellc.com to schedule your free consultation and let Ranchite take care of the numbers so you can take care of the rest of it.
I enjoy the phrase, again, not original to me, that is, I feel sometimes like our job is to comfort the troubled and to trouble the comfortable. If you expect to go to these types of programs and have people just tell you how great you are and what a good job you're doing, you've kind of gone for the wrong purpose. You're not getting your money's worth, right? I want to go to something where I'm going to learn and somebody's going to really challenge me in a way that kind of hurts, right? That makes me think, man, I need to reevaluate my life from the beginning, and challenges me enough. It may not mean that I actually make any changes, but it challenges me enough that I really have to think through the things that I am doing. And learning how to think, I think, is a big important part of that. The tools you guys teach are often, again, not practices, but they are principles, and they are how to think, right? How do we work through a problem? How do we evaluate the economics of a particular activity? How do we find out the parts that best benefit our business? Knowing that every ranch is unique. There are a million ways to skin a cat, that sort of thing.
Yeah. An example of that I just kind of hit me in the face last week is we were sitting there at a workshop and the speaker was pretty much saying, you're an idiot if you make hay on your ranch. And I just thought, that's so wrong, right? Because there's some people that they should be making hay. Maybe they shouldn't be running cows, right? These things. But I think, our job is to say, what do you want this thing to be? Well, let's look at your numbers.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Your hay business is killing it. Good for you, right? Do you enjoy making hay? Well, if you do, hot dog, away you go. And it's not for us to sit up there and say every ranch needs to do X, Y, and Z and A, B, C.
But just because that guy's good at hay doesn't mean that everybody else should be making hay, right?
Right.
That's sometimes more important. I we have a set of books that we look at regularly that is one of the most profitable businesses we look at, and it is a hay business. And yet I would hesitate to recommend what he does to other people because he knows his business. He does it incredibly well and he makes a ton of money at it. That doesn't mean that that's going to be my experience as an example. I'm not going to recommend that Wally Olson go down that path because he's going to break everything before he's even out of the barn, right?
That's a great thought to end on, is Wally Olson making hay.
Yeah. Believe it or not, Wally Olson owned a custom haying business at one point.
Wow.
That gives you an idea of how lucrative it was at that time. Anyway, very good. All right. Is there anything else you want to think about? I think about the regularity. The other thing that I've implemented with a lot of my team members over the years is if we send someone to something that is educational, I want them to bring something back and share it with the team. Now, sometimes the whole team goes. That's a little different dynamic, but oftentimes we're sending somebody, let's say, to a grazing school or a nutrition program or, all kinds of different education things. And then when they come back, I really want them to share it with the rest of the team. I'd like to just talk a little about maybe the value of that, both from the individual and from the team perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective. And maybe it's not just when people go to educational events, maybe it's a part of the normal rhythm of the team conversations, right? So at staff meetings, at things like that, people are, hey, what's a book you're reading? What's something we're talking about? So there becomes this part of the culture of continued development.
Yeah, love it.
I like the way if you're sending somebody to something, there's an expectation that they're going to come back and put a piece in front of it. Make sure you're setting that person up for success. Like, I wouldn't send them to a ranching for profit school and have them come back to the staff meeting and say, all right, you've got 15 minutes to tell us what you've learned.
Correct. Yeah.
Say, hey, share with us one thing that was impactful for you out of the school, right?
Yep.
So that people can be set up for success and those kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other one is we try not to set it up so that they're coming back to a group of people that have never heard of ranching for profit, right? Maybe especially with ranching for profit, we have common language around that where 6 different people take the class. I'm sure you get 6 different what stood out to me the most. I love when we have people that have gone to an RFP school and they get back. It's like, okay, so what did you hear? Because it's a lot of material and sometimes you get lost in a thought and you miss the next couple minutes, right? So
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think Bert Teichert talks about the value of being a lifelong learner. And for everyone that I know is successful, whether in this industry or others, those are people that read. Those are people that attend public lectures, that pay to have people coach them oftentimes. Those are people that are actively engaged in trying to be better. And I think while we can accomplish a lot just by, sitting quietly and thinking, there is a tremendous amount of room for us to continue to get better. I've been around a few businesses that really felt like they were the top of the heap, that they were the best. And what's fascinating is they may have been at one point for a moment, but as soon as you start thinking that way, you aren't anymore. The world is changing. We live in such a dynamic situation, such a dynamic industry The fun part about it is there is unlimited potential for improvement and change. So that's one of the things I actually love about our industry. Keeps it exciting and fresh after 20, 30 years.
Absolutely.
Dallas, I appreciate what you do. Give us a quick rundown. You've got some schools coming up. You've got a website. What do people do to get more from you guys?
Sure. Yeah. We've got a lot of options of schools this winter. We're getting ready to hit our busy time here in another month, and we'll be delivering schools all over the place. Go to our website, ranchmanagement.com, look at our schedule page, find a school that works for you. Don't just choose the closest school. You might have a better experience going somewhere else, meeting a whole network of other folks. So a lot of options in front. We'll be all over the place. Pick one, sign up. Generally, our schools start filling up in October, November. So if you want to pick the one that works for your schedule, get on there and get registered. You make a deposit, but that deposit is fully transferable to another school. So if you sign up for the Billings one and a few weeks goes by and you say, you know what, I'd rather go to this one, you just let us know and we'll flop that over. So
yeah, love it. Okay, Dallas, I really appreciate all that you guys do at RFP. I appreciate you and our friendship and the discussions we get to have. And I look forward to doing a lot more. So thanks for joining us today.
I feel the same way, John. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you for tuning into the Ranchonomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.